So thank you for coming to my info session on places of religion in London. Now, here in the room, we have Anna and Ty and Ben, or Benjamin, which Ben?
I go by that.
Ben. And are you a religion person too?
I'm not, I'm a finance major,
Okay, great, great.
but I love this.
Good, good. I love it too, which is why I'm going to teach it. So I'm teaching places of religion in London, which is Biblical and Religious Studies 497. Of course, dates are subject to change, but with that said, the expectation is a departure from the US on May 25th, arriving in London at the Daniel House on the morning of May 26th, and then depart the Daniel House on June 9th. So that's when you would go back to the airport and go back to the States, or if you're continuing your European travels, you would continue. And I guess it is possible to travel beforehand and be at the Daniel House on the morning of May 26th. So this is the Daniel House, not my photo, but it's a darn good one, which is in Daniel House is very convenient. It's Sanford's property in London, as you may know. Has anyone been there? Has anyone had a friend go? Maybe. Okay. So the Daniel House is very centrally located in London. There's videos you can watch online. So they're on this link. When I put this up somewhere, there's an old tour, a few years old tour of the Daniel House on Instagram by our director of UK programs, Tom Crosby. And so the Daniel House is where we will stay, but we won't be doing much classwork there, unlike this semester when we do more work there. It's right by the Gloucester Road tube stop. That's the metro in London, the subway, which is only so it's just 2 blocks from that. It's a short walk from Victoria and Albert Museum. It's a short walk, or it's a walk from Kensington Gardens, Big Park, where Kensington Palace is, and it's near other of our sites and is centrally located. Okay, so I've been to London before, twice to teach for Sanford, once a 2-week term years ago, 20 years ago. And then just 2 years ago, I taught these folks and others in London for the semester. And so this crew of people were in British Heritage and Culture. But one of the places that we went by and that we will go probably is St. Paul's Cathedral there. So being in London for almost 4 months, I got a good chance to get to know places so you can get the new and improved version of this class. So we will go to such traditional tourist sites and landmarks of architecture, such as St. Paul's Cathedral, the Church of England Cathedral for London, designed by Sir Christopher Wren. Westminster Abbey, the Royal Church, which is closer to the Daniel House by St. Paul's. You can actually walk there fairly easily. And that's where royal coronations and funerals are held. This is my crew that was actually in the religion class, most of them. And this is at the Gurdwara in Southall, one of them, the largest one outside of India. We'll see more pictures of that. And we will go to hopefully the Buddhist, Thai Buddhist temple, which is where we were visiting with the monk there, and where all 5 who were in my religion class were. So what does it mean for religions to take place? That's kind of my big theme for this class. We're thinking about place in a lot of different dimensions and really using London as the classroom to get all around. Take place in a couple of different ways. Let me just mention what pictures you have here. Here's the minaret, one of them that is on the East London Mosque, which is probably has the largest number of people who are involved in any mosque in London. It's not the most architecturally impressive. And then this is St. Mary Aldermary, which is another Wren church. This is one Gothic or colonial Gothic revival church, but it has a cafe in the back of it. I mean, a lot of these churches in central London were built there, they were built there when people lived near them. Now it's all banks. And so what do you redo with these spaces? So part of it is a church and part of it is a cafe, as you can see there. So themes of the course are religious architecture in a couple of senses. Number one, the way buildings claim space on the landscape and sort of their overall monumentality is one theme. Another theme is how do they function as spaces for worship? How do they shape worship spaces? So we will attend worship services. And I should say for that reason, we will generally have class on Sunday and Saturday because we'll be going to places for their peak services. And you will have some free days, at least two together, and probably another one for travel if you want, or if you do your own thing, because of course doing your own thing is very important during class, beyond class, on class days when we're not in class, it's free time. So to explore London around. So, but that will be a little bit of a change from maybe what the other class who's in residence with us will be doing. And then also one of the things I love to think about is change over time. How are these spaces adapted? And so as we see there in St. Mary Aldermary. So there's lots of changes there, but we also want to think about space in terms of how does religion take up space in the city? Thinking about urban religious geography, how spaces relate to one another, and in what parts of town they're there, and how religion is reflected in shops and in customs and neighborhoods, and layers of history there again, and then thinking about how religion shows itself in public, and then issues of immigration. Then a third sort of major theme, I think, of the course is religious engagement and understanding. So we will meet, not at every site, but we'll have opportunities to visit and have conversations with people who represent the different religious groups that we're talking about ministry, hearing about these different religious traditions from them. That sort of thing, all that. And then also thinking about legal relations in the city and in Britain. I have lots of pictures in this slide to sort of give you views in this deck to give you views of what we're going to be doing. I'll just rattle through some names of places that we would visit, all a little bit subject to change, but definitely go to most of these. The Swaminarayan Mandir is a Hindu temple affiliated with a particular group of people who are called Swaminarayanans, and the one in Neasden was at the time of its building the largest one outside of India and the most ornate. The one they just opened in New Jersey is bigger and better, but it's pretty impressive here in London. The world's largest Gurdwara, Sikh Gurdwara, Sikhism is another religion we'll talk about outside of India, is in Southall. We will go there. I have pictures of that I should show. We'll go to landmark Christian places like Westminster Abbey and lesser landmarks like Wesley's Chapel, which was the church that was built for John Wesley late in his life, the founder of Methodism, where he's buried and where one of my college friends is pastor, actually. We will go to other non-denominational evangelical spaces like Westminster Chapel. We'll visit, you already saw, St. Mary's Aldermary, Christopher Wren's city churches, thinking about churches on the landscape. East London Mosque showed up there late. Fine. Animation, place to think about the well of religion in museums, like the Victoria and Albert Museum, bring religious objects in museums, and they try to recreate church spaces. And then we plan to get out of Metro London at least once to visit a cathedral city that's relatively nearby, either St. Albans or Rochester or the big one, Canterbury. Okay. So let's see, what are the most pressing things for you to know? I'll say just a word about how we assess a class like this. You know, what do you have to do? Because we're on the go pretty much all the time, going around, seeing different places. And so assessment, there will be some reading, but assessment and activity is a bit different than a normal course. You'll keep a journal to daily reflect, because that's really important, because I don't know about you, but when I travel, I'm often taking in everything. And if I don't sit down and write about it or think about it, then it just goes away. And so that's just an important discipline to help us handle our massive information. Everyone in the class will probably do an introduction to the site, brief talk to help us orient before we go there. Perhaps where she can put that together and we can share that on our devices or on the screens in the Daniel House so that you can be illustrated, because that's important. There'll be some little online quizzes in campus to help us master information. You'll do a presentation on what I call a ritual, or what the business calls a ritual architectural event, which is talking about a particular worship service or other ritual in its environment, in its liturgical environment of the church. So that's important. And then probably what we'll come up with at the end is a reflective, illustrated essay, web essay that you'll put online that you can put pictures in, on some theme of what London suggests about the place of religion in its future, as we think about in London. Let me pause there and hear if you have any questions for me at this point before I can illustrate. I've given you the cliff notes and I can go in and illustrate a lot of things and try to entice you. So I've probably built this backwards, but Anna has to leave. So that's the way I'm doing this.
So as far as I know we're going to do a lot of different religious places, so we're going to bring monasteries and stuff.
That's a great question. When visiting mosques and temples, they probably aren't going to demand long skirts. It would be best to have long pants, slacks, skirts would be fine. Some of that. So May, June in London. I mean, when my time in London was January through April. And the previous time I thought there was January. I have visited in like August or whatnot. Yeah, and so then the problem was, I remember the first tour I took with the students the first day when they'd been there a week. Hey, took them outside and it was freezing. I mean, literally was freezing. And too many of the students in the class had jeans with large rips in them that they had chosen to wear that day, which was I guess fashionable, but a little bit ill-read anyway. So yeah. That should be it. But I mean, if you go, we'll talk more about packing and whatnot. But you know, as with any trip, you want a few items that you can versatilely combine with others for appropriate occasions. And that's the way to pack when you're traveling. Yeah. Other questions at this juncture?
I'm just here because he was the one.
Okay. So
I'm just here for fun.
all right. Well, I will. Well, you ought to come. But I will continue to try to entice you and talk more about the content. Anything I should cover at this point from the office's perspective? All the fine details about prices and finance and whatnot are online on the website. And I can do one screenshot of that and go to the website. But let me continue to try to get you more interested in London. Okay, let's not start there. Let's come back to that. So when we think about religion in London, of course, religion in the present day involves people as well as places. So what's the religious affiliation of people in London? Now, the government of England, the UK government, at least in England and Wales, does a religious census as part of their decanal every 10-year census, unlike the US. So we actually know what people tell the government. And so within metropolitan London, about 41% of people tell the government that they're Christian. About 27% of the people tell the government that they are no religion. Now, if you go to Wikipedia, you will see that says atheist. That does not mean atheist. That's not what the government is offering these people. They might be agnostic, or they might just be what we call nuns, people who may even go to church once in a while, but are telling the government they're no particular religion. Okay. 15% of people in metropolitan London are Muslim. About 5% are Hindu, a little over 1.5% Jewish, and an equal number are Sikhs, and then Buddhists is around 1%. So we will definitely be going to Christian places, we'll be going to Muslim places, we'll be going to Hindu places, we'll be going to Sikh places, we'll probably go to Buddhist places, and we might go to Jewish places, but that gives you a sense of that. Now, let me back up here. When we think about Metro London, it is the lighter area is Metropolitan Greater London, as it's officially called, which is a municipal unit. And so you can see the red line, I think that outlines its borders. And so the Daniel House is basically right where this red star is, right in the middle of things. So you can see the Daniel House is not far from Trafalgar Square of the National Gallery, and it's not a bad bike ride to Tower Bridge. If you hop on the bikes that are rented all around, or you would take the tube there. But we will be going further afield to lots of places, such as Southall and Wimbledon, and maybe to East Ham, maybe not, but to East Ham out here. And why is that? I want to talk a little bit about geography there. Here we have maps of the religious population where they are. So you can see Christians are pretty much all over. But if we look at the other religions, Muslims are a lot of places, but particularly central east to east. Hindus are mainly here in the west. And the Sikhs are strongly concentrated here in the west around Southall. And the Buddhists are much more spread, depending whether they're immigrants or whatnot. So the different, and Jews are up here in this section. So we really have to get around because it's not a religious, people are not mixed uniformly throughout the city. So let's take a little walk in central London. So we've taken the tube to Cannon Street, okay? Right in the heart of the City of London, that is the financial district, the old walled part of London. And so we can walk up here to this street, and we can go into this building here and go downstairs, and we can go to an ancient Roman temple, the Mithraeum, where they worship Mithras, that they dug up the site and it's now a museum. And so we would do that because we have to remember that London was established by the Romans. And so it's over a 2,000-year-old city. So we would encounter this ancient religious practice and think about how this ancient temple is recreated with this sound and light show. You can see they have these projections of showing the columns and whatnot as they try to talk about these early ancient mystery religions, rituals, which arguably are a lot like the way Christians were worshiping at the time, depending on which early Christian scholar consult. I haven't quizzed Dr. Wynn about his views on such things. Okay, so then after touring here and you've seen the show downstairs and all the archaeological things, this is in a building that's owned by Bloomberg, if you know that. And hearing that, we would come back upstairs, up to the street level. And I should say we go down because London has been built up. So they have it at the original level that the street was, but over 2,000 years, you pile lots of trash, and so it's been built up. And so right across the street is St. Stephen Walbrook, one of Christopher Wren's greatest churches. It's got a dome. Christopher Wren was the architect who designed the churches for London after the Great London Fire of 1666. So there's a huge fire, destroyed pretty much everything in London, lots of the churches. And of course, being a medieval city, there were lots and lots and lots of churches, more churches than Protestants of 1660s needed. So they didn't rebuild all of them, but they rebuilt a lot of them. And so we can also think about how, okay, here we have this neoclassical late 17th century church, and we have this modern nondescript building there that is Starbucks now. Now that was probably built as a parish office, but then they figured out, oh, we can rent it out and make money with Starbucks. Okay, so we go inside this church and we can see it's very traditional, very much, this church was damaged in the Blitz in World War II. So this is probably not the original altarpiece, but it's been restored. And we can think about what Anglican worship is like in its early times of the 17th century and 18th century. And we can see that this is a very traditional altar. We have a communion rail so that dogs can't get into the communion table. Literally, I've walked into churches and there are dogs walking around, so it's important to have a communion rail. And and that's also where Anglicans would kneel for communion, and then by statute, they were supposed to have the Lord's Prayer, the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments in the Exodus version, and the Apostles' Creed. So these three standards of prayer, ethics, law, and faith there. Okay, so that's at the business end of the traditional business church. We can look up and see his wonderful dome. Now, all this had to be repaired after the Blitz. Okay, but then we can think about how this church has been rearranged and reordered in the 1980s. When they put in this elaborate stone carved altar right in the middle of the church, reflecting a very different understanding of the relationship of the people to the Lord's Supper. So rather than having a table at the east end, here it's celebrated at this elaborate stone altar that's right in the middle. And if we time things right, we could go there for a service, a noonday service. And we have a pipe organ here and look all around, and we appreciate this marvelous space and debate this renovation, because we're dealing with a lot of old churches, and so they've been renovated at different times for different understandings of worship, as well as different aesthetics. Okay, so then we could go down the street just 2 blocks to here, and we could see St. Mary Aldermary, Christopher Wren's one Gothic revival church, and think about it, think about how it's bringing in these statues that wouldn't have originally been there, talk about a traditional divided chancel arrangement, talk about the rising interest in icons, and then I sort of already spilled the beans here because we can have a cup of coffee, or better yet, we can have a cup of tea here in the church. And we can, if it's the right time, we can even get lunch from the trucks outside and get a halal cheeseburger, or not cheeseburgers, but maybe cheeseburgers. But you can get sushi or whatever you want, all sorts of food. You can eat here, and we could have small conversations, not all 10 of us, because that would seem rather loud for all these people who are co-working or whatever there in the back. So I didn't put a picture of my bear. Go to my Facebook page, my Instagram page, you can see my bear goes into the church. I have a whole tour of the church, it's featuring my stuff there. I do, it's on Instagram, go see it. Okay, then we can walk down the street to St. Paul's Cathedral. Probably St. Christopher Wren. Tell him when I said that. Don't tell him when I said that. Recording. Sir Christopher Wren's famous church, cathedral. Because the Cathedral of St. Paul was destroyed in the Blitz, not in the Great Fire rather, and the dome was damaged in the Blitz, not the dome, but the nave. So we could see the church there, and we could think about how that site has evolved since the time of this man, Mellitus, who was the first bishop of London back around 600, in the early 600s. And so here there's this icon of him that's displayed near the altar, and the church right behind the Daniel House is now used for St. Mellitus College, the theological training center that's named for him. Oh, I have things out of sequence. There's Winter, the bear in the church. Okay, so back to St. Paul's, and so we could tour St. Paul's, think about its space, how they've rearranged it to put the altar here. We can think about state occasions that happen here, such as the festival to celebrate the Queen's Jubilee that was in here. This isn't where, it's where Charles was married the first time to Diana, but most royal occasions are at the Abbey. Winston Churchill's funeral is here. And this should look familiar. Does this look familiar? That's the statue that the statue downstairs is a copy of. This is John Howard from Howard College's name. Okay, if you don't recognize it by that statue downstairs, it is supposed to be a copy of it, a direct copy. It's not a direct copy. Okay, they went through a lot of effort, but the sculptor, whose name I've forgotten, who did this back in the 17th century, was more talented than the current reproduction firm we have, but we're happy to have it. Okay. So St. Paul's, from St. Paul's, we might walk up and we might think about how famous religion events are remembered in this evolving cityscape, destroyed by bombs, fire, and whatnot. So this is what's called the Wesley Flame. If any of you heard of John Wesley? Okay, so you may know John Wesley famously in 1738 had what Methodists call his Aldersgate experience. That when he was at a prayer meeting on this site and listening to Luther's preface to the Romans being read, he felt his heart strangely warmed. He felt Christ had died for him. And so there's nothing that remains of that house on Aldersgate Street. And in fact, Aldersgate Street at this point sort of runs underneath, and there's all these elevated sidewalks as part of this redevelopment. But this Wesley Flame monument is there. And there I am in January, that's why we're all bundled up, with my Methodist pastor friend, Jennifer Smith. And then we might wander a little bit over to the oldest, largest church in central London, which is St. Bartholomew the Great. We might think about how this functioned when it was a monastery, very different from the way it functions now. We might think about its different uses over time in various ways. And then we can wander over just a few blocks to Wesley's Chapel. And so here's a statue of John Wesley, and we can think about how this is memorializing him. This is the building built in the late 1700s, before he died, for about 10 years before he died, where he preached, which has now become sort of where it's recognized as the mother church of Methodism, and therefore it's pretty elaborate inside now. And so we can look at its arrangement, think about its central pulpit here, much lower than it was in Wesley's day, because they cut it down. We can think about the difference between its freestanding table they use now here for communion versus this old table back here with a cross made of Alabama marble, given by Alabama Methodists here, and his mother's kitchen table inside that wooden altar. And we can think about the significance of the baptismal font here, which has in the middle of it a stone from, I forget the Caribbean island, but was the back step stone of this house where the first Methodist church was organized on that Caribbean island, which was largely a church for enslaved people. That's there. By the time we get there, the stone inside the baptismal font might have been returned, because Jennifer's supposed to do that sometime here, she was telling me. And we can think about what it means that this is now a very multiracial church with people from lots and lots of African countries who make up the majority of its membership. Although its pastors are these white folks, well, that white folk over there is my friend Jennifer, and other people there. But this is from a baptism that they had just at the beginning of this month, where there's a young man being baptized. So that's one little tour in central London. And then we can go lots of other places and think about lots of other tours and landscapes. Let me pause. Any questions? Any enticements? Anything you want to know? Excitement. So we'll be thinking about landscapes, we'll be thinking about buildings, we'll be getting to know religious people. So let me give you another example of another neighborhood just briefly. So if we go out to Southall, near Heathrow, the airport that you might fly into, we would, there's my Southall. So yeah, there it is. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're out here in the blue section to the west. And so in the middle of Southall, there's a cemetery that looks like classic England, right? I mean, this looks very English. This enclosed cemetery, all that area. But, and so that is there, but right across the street is the Gurdwara, this huge house of worship for the Sikh tradition. Sikhism is an Indian religion that developed from the 1400s as an offshoot of Hinduism emerging in the context of Islam. And it's associated strongly with Punjabi identity and the Punjabi people. And so this is right there. And if we go, sure it's inside. So this is the inside of the space. So they have elaborate stained glass window, all these different levels here. Everyone sits on the floor, right? And you can see, like in a lot of religions, they separate men and women, but not like in Islam with the women behind the men usually, but rather equal on either side. And there's no statue here, rather under this canopy is a very large platform, kind of like an easel, not like this, but really big, on which is enthroned the guru. And the guru is their scripture, the book, because they had a chain of 10 living gurus. And then the last one in the 1600s transferred his authority to the book. So they treat the book, which is largely hymns in Punjabi and other language, as a person, really. And they bow to it and they fan it. They read from it as well, but it's really the supreme manifestation of God's presence on earth. And so they're all coming up here and they would make their offering and then bow to the guru. Here's a reader who's sitting behind the guru. Again, the guru is the book. And you see these little rooms around the top. That is where they keep different copies of the book. So they have multiple copies, but they each get kept in their own room where they're placed on a platform, a bed-like platform. And they carry, and when they carry the guru, of course, it's supreme, so they carry it on their heads. This is not a British picture, but it's one I could find. And so we'll go there and hear from and talk to a Sikh and learn about that. These are all different rooms where they would be reading from the guru, because to read the whole book in one sitting is a very pious thing, and so they have multiple readers going on here as well as the common services. But one of the other very interesting things that happens at a Sikh Gurdwara is every Sikh Gurdwara has a what's called a langar. They have a kitchen where volunteers prepare food that is served to anyone who wants to come. Vegetarian food that's served to anyone who wants to come. And so we will eat lunch there. And so they have all sorts of lovely Indian type dishes and plenty of fresh naan bread. And then we stand around and eat or sit and talk about it, because everyone sits on the ground so that they're level next to each other. Or if you don't want to sit, they do tend to have these high tables now, so you stand at a counter. They don't have chairs like you're sitting in the langar hall downstairs. But as you can see, they're wearing turbans and traditional dress, but also Union Jack aprons, right? So embracing that. But then there's also here in South Hall, there's a lot of other religious sites, both old and new. So here's the old, one of the old Methodist churches, or old congregational churches, I think, I forget which as you can see is just 2 doors down from a Hindu temple that's dedicated to Lord Ram. And then right across the street from them on the high street, that's what they call a main street, is a halal meat market. And halal meat is the kind of meat that's eaten by Muslims. That's what it means, clean. And so Muslims have to have meat that is properly slaughtered. And so just like you can go to the Mediterranean market over here on Green Springs, buy halal meat, or you can go here if you're in London. And but yet in this area, there's not a lot of mosques. There's one little storefront mosque that has this little stairwell that leads upstairs, a place to pray. Masjid is the Arabic for mosque, so it's just there. And then down the street, there's Catholic Church, very nice modern Catholic church dedicated to Saint Anselm of Canterbury. And if I remember right, the day we leave for London is the feast of Saint Anselm, so it's great timing. So that's the church there. And then down the street is a Methodist church that may have closed by now, that was built in the early 20th century when this place was being very populated by workers. And as you can see, it came to serve a lot of different languages, right? You can see there in terms of, I think I see Arabic here and probably Punjabi and Hindi. All advertising the different services, or I guess Punjabi and Urdu, since it's says that there. But here's another great shot of the kitchen where they make the meal, the langer. So these pots are enormous, right? Enormous pots for dal and rice. And there's also here in this neighborhood, we can get to know, here is a Buddhist center, and then 2 doors down is another, for lack of a better term, I'm gonna call it another Hindu center, but it's a particular Hindu group that we could explain in more detail. All right, so that gives you a view of 2 neighborhoods. We will also, of course, go to landmark churches, and so let me just entice you with a little bit of yeah, okay. So here is Westminster Abbey. You may have seen it on TV. This is where the king was crowned. How many people watched the coronation? Yes, yes. You're the first person I've asked who said that. It's yes. Anyway, so this was where the king was crowned, right here, where they built all the on the Cosmati pavement. So this is the high altar. And hopefully one of the, and then this is the choir. So this is the high altar here in this choir, and hopefully we'll go to evensong there, where you'll probably not sit in these choir stalls, but out on the sides. Or one of my favorite things to do in London is to get down to Westminster Abbey by 8 AM on a Tuesday morning. Because at 8 AM on Tuesday morning, the morning communion service is celebrated here at this altar in the very heart of Westminster Abbey, beneath this shrine, which is where St. Edward the Confessor is buried. And St. Edward was the king who had the first Westminster Abbey built, and he became a saint afterwards. And so the reason Westminster Abbey is a holy place, and the reason all the kings and queens are buried around him, is they want to be buried close to the saint, or he wanted to be buried there, and he probably anticipated that other kings would be buried there, but then they have the saint there. So there's always an 8 AM small said communion service each day of the week at Westminster Abbey, and they hold it in different chapels on different days, but as a rule, Tuesday mornings, it's here. So that's something we'll do, hopefully. And then this is another cathedral in town. This is Southwark, looking from, if we were to look out from that shrine down Westminster Abbey, we would see a view like this, but this is across town at Southwark Cathedral on the south side of the Thames. So yeah, so lots of different religions, lots of different places, learning lots of liturgical architecture, and talking to people about faith and thinking about how all this fits together in London and what all this has to do with the British state. So this is the Lady Chapel at Westminster Abbey. This was built by Henry VII. It has the world's best fan vaulted ceiling, probably. And so this is the chapel for the Royal Order of the Bath. So the second, it's a military order. You've probably heard of the Order of the Garter, maybe. That's sort of the highest of the English orders of knights. And their chapel is St. George's in Windsor. But this is the chapel here behind the lady chapels are at the eastern end of a church in England. So churches always have the altar at the east, just like our 2 chapels on campus, right? Happen to have the altar at the east. Happen to. And so if we were to build another chapel behind Chapman 214, extending out toward Probst Hall, that's sort of where this was built. Okay. And questions, enticements, yes, sir.
Just thinking about earlier, you showed like the pie chart of like the different religions that were found in London. How much of those percentages would you say are immigrants, and how much of those percentages would you say are people who lived in London and then found to really find peace in Islam? So
right, okay. I would say that, of course, we're talking about multiple generations of people from various parts of the world who have lived in London right now. But I would expect that the Muslim, Hindu, and Sikh numbers are almost entirely people who are of non-English descent. People who are maybe, you know, second, third, fourth generation residents of England. And were British citizens before that, or British subjects, because they were lived other places in the British Empire. Now they'd be from lots of different parts of the world. So the largest Muslim population in London is probably Bangladeshi. So that's probably the largest group. And then others from South Asia, Pakistan, India, and then Muslims from places like East Africa, Tanzania, places like that. That would be the where that Muslim population is coming. Certainly, the East London Mosque is in the middle of a Bangladeshi, largely neighborhood now. And we can also think about how spaces are repurposed. So, I have pictures, but I'm not going to fumble for them right now. But one of the older immigrant mosques in London is the Brick Lane Mosque. And see if I get this right. The Brick Lane Mosque meets in a building that was built in in the 1700s, early 1700s, for French-speaking Protestants, Huguenots, people like Paul Revere and John Calvin, who were both from French-speaking Protestant families. And so, and then that this building on Brick Lane became a synagogue. It was a synagogue, a Jewish synagogue, for many, many years. And the Jews moved on, and so now for about the past 30 years, it's been a mosque. And so we can think about the succession of spaces there with that neighborhood. And now Brick Lane, where it is, while it used to be very much sort of an immigrant community on the east side of London, lots of people of Bangladeshi descent who were moving in as the Germans and Jews were moving out. Now it's been very much taken over by, it's a trendy, urban, hip place. And so all of the Asian restaurants that I was talking to when I was over there trying to make plans for things in London are Joe Burkhart, who you'll meet, who's our Associate Director of UK Programs or some such. Anyway, there's their actual title. But she, you know, we were talking about places that take students for Indian food, and she's like, well, you used to go to Brick Lane, but now that's just been so sort of commercialized, or, you know, or other things like that. So she told me about a wonderful place, which they closed since I left London, but Indian Club used to be a great place. Yeah, so that's probably now, and also you have to in London, a huge portion of this Christian population is non-English as well. In fact, one reason London, the number of non-religious people in London, metropolitan London, is lower than in England as a whole because of the higher non-European heritage population. Yeah, so that's part of the dynamic going on there. Yeah, interesting question. Other questions you'd like to know about the trip? So, like I say, we go. We stay at the Daniel House. They provide some foods for breakfast, so you can treat breakfast as included if you want. If you prefer the coffee they serve at the popular place across the street, and the pastries they serve at the popular place 2 blocks away, you can do that. But if you want your cereal and tea and whatnot, Tom keeps the place stocked for that. I hear we'll have a couple common meals as the activity. I think at the same time we're in the house, it's this international insurance course from the business school that'll be in residence in the house with us. So there'll be some common night activities that Tom would work out for us. You would have sometimes we will have, if we go to like an Evensong somewhere, you might have an early evening activity. This is a sung church service at an Anglican church. So, but that would be over by 6:37. So you'd have a lot of evenings free. You're right there, you included, well, included as part of your package, you get a card for the metro that has a certain amount of cash, which should be enough to get you through, I mean, the underground, I should say, too. That'll a certain amount of cash that should get you through things. They used to do it by zone, but that doesn't really work so well anymore. They just work to finding balance. So the you can ride wherever you want. So that's their other meals. I mean, you may, if we're stopping somewhere for lunch, we'll go to the same place, but you may be on your own for most of those kinds of meals, but all that's included in the projected non-billable costs. So your billable costs covering your tuition, this 4 credit hour course, your room in the Daniel House, and the program fee, which includes the budget I have to pay for, like, because when you want to go to Westminster Abbey, that costs money. Because I mean, it doesn't cost money to go there for church. Go to 8 a.m. worship service, that's free. To the 5:30 evensong, that's free. You want to tour around, then we pay during the day, and likewise for St. Paul's and some of the other places. And when we go, like another place, I didn't talk about Hindu spots, and I have things in the deck here about them. So one of the went by a couple of Hindu places. I'll give you a quick tour of Hindu places. So this is the Neasden Temple, which is the largest temple near London. It's built by the Swaminarayan movement. Mandir means temple. It is a huge, big place. You can't take pictures inside, but this is one from their website. These are all columns that are hand carved, very elaborate. And then you see back here behind the canopy in this room that you can see in, there are their deities and their chants there. But then right off of Oxford Street, right in the middle of Soho, in the heart of London, is this other Hindu temple, the Radha Krishna Temple, which belongs to the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, or the Hare Krishnas, if you've ever heard of them. And so this is another devotional movement linked to a particular guru who founded this movement in 1964. And so they own this building where they have a vegetarian restaurant where they sell you food for normal prices. But that food is all pure vegetarian food. So it's conforms to, there are certain things they don't cook in addition to being all vegetarian. And it's all officially been offered to Krishna and therefore is infused with his blessing and divine grace when you receive it. And it's all prepared by volunteers who are making good merit, making good karma, showing their devotion to Krishna by doing that. But if you go in through this door and go upstairs to what in Britain they would call the first floor, they call this the ground floor, they call that the first floor, is the temple. And so here in this room, we have this marble tile floor, and people sit on the floor here. Here's a devotee who's a monk, a man who's taking vows. This is the woman who was our guide there. And so she's leading the noon service, which consists of repeatedly singing the mantra, the great mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, which means praise to Krishna, praise to Rama. Thank you, Ben.
God, that's gonna be a 4.
All right. Oh, I'm all the way to 4, almost 4. Okay. All right. But anyway, you're welcome. So we have this place here, up on the second floor. And she gave us a wonderful tour, took us upstairs, talked about lots of things, talked about how, in her words, she grew up Hindu in Switzerland, and her parents still worship these things that they think are gods, but are really very lesser beings. And so then she encountered the truth of this Krishna consciousness movement. And so now she's a devotee of Krishna. And she's standing here next to the statue of the guru who founded the Prabhupada, and he sits at the back of the room, focused on the deity at the front. So that's an example there. And then another immigrant community temple is this one, which is out in East Ham. So this is a temple that's dedicated to the goddess Lakshmi, who's the goddess of fortune. If you go by Dr. Battaglia's door, and where she's got all those deities, Murtis, if there's one that has gold coming out of the hand, that's Lakshmi, because she's the goddess of fortune. So this was built in West Ham by largely a community of folks who are Tamil, that ethnicity from the state of Tamil Nadu and other places in South India. And it sits right on the high street in East Ham, right across from Tennessee Chicken. I love that photo. You ever eaten Tennessee Chicken? Me neither. And so this just shows us about how, and then there's a Baptist church down the street and another Hindu temple 2 miles or 1 mile away and whatnot. But this is very much an immigrant community, as opposed to the ISKCON community that has others there. You can see they're a large enough presence there that they have a banner of Happy Pongal. Pongal is is their January festival. That's really it's a sweet rice festival, but it's a big winter Christmas kind of festival. It's going on at that time, but alongside all the other shops. So here there's some Hindu religious goods stores that are right there next to it. And so that gives you, and then there's another, I had one more and then I used in class, but that was a video. So there's another Hindu temple in Ealing that we go to that's actually in, it's dedicated to another title of the goddess and is not Tamil, but a different ethnicity. And it's in an old Methodist church. So again, we see some of this adaptation and we see churches opening up storefronts. So, you know, there's a lot of ebb and flow in the landscape. So come to London, explore places of religion, bring your friends. My office is in Chapman 228, as you know. I'm happy to take questions. So do all sort of stuff, anything. But thank you. She'll probably stop the recording if that's enough. Do you have any questions for the officials? Logistics.
I do have one question.